Thousands of newcomers move into Arizona every month, and for the vast majority of these people, they have no idea about the laws of Arizona. Joining us on Arizona Illustrated is Tucson attorney Donald Luce, who's written a new book titled Arizona Laws 101, a handbook for non-lawyers. Mr. Luce, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Bill.
So how did this book come about?
I had been writing a legal newsletter for my clients since 1982, and it occurred to me one time that I could put the same effort that I put into the newsletter into a book, but on a much larger scale, and accomplish basically the same purpose, which was to teach non-lawyers about different topics that would be of relevance to them in their everyday life.
What are some of the confusing things when it comes to law that, whether you're a newcomer or a longtime resident, that you may have some trouble with?
Well, first of all, Arizona is a community property state. There are only 13 community property states in the United States. And so people moving here from other parts of the country wouldn't necessarily know that, and even if they did know that, wouldn't necessarily know what that means. So what I've done in the book is I've explained the community property law, and I've given some helpful tips about how you might use the law to maximize your advantage.
Simply put, what does that mean, a community property state?
Any property acquired by a husband or a wife during marriage is treated as a community. That means that the marital estate itself has an undivided interest in all of the property, regardless of how the property is titled. So if the property is in the husband's name, that is not indicative of the fact that it may or may not be the husband's property.
So if you're moving here from another state that was not a community property state, it might be a good idea to perhaps put the property in both names?
Not necessarily. Arizona law treats property coming into our state the same as if the property were acquired here once you establish residency.
How about some of the misconceptions? You talk about 10 common misconceptions about divorce in Arizona. Share with us some of those.
Thank you. Well, the first common misconception is that if you file first, there's an advantage. That's not true. If you file first, it simply means you're first. The person who files is the petitioner. The person who responds is the respondent, but neither the petitioner nor the respondent have any substantive advantage in the divorce proceeding. It just means you've gotten to the courthouse first if you filed first. Another common misconception is that spousal maintenance is granted in a majority of cases. That's simply not true. Under Arizona law, spousal maintenance is available, but it's typically not awarded except in cases where there's a marriage of long duration, or one spouse is unable to support himself or herself and needs it to maintain their lifestyle.
You also get into criminal law and DUI. Any differences in DUI between other states and Arizona?
There are. But what we're finding is that the states are becoming more uniform in their DUI laws, both in terms of substance and procedure. And the reason for that is because under federal mandate, the states have to have a .08 as the threshold limit in order to receive certain federal funding. So Arizona, along with many other states, has adopted the .08 as the presumptive legal limit. Doesn't mean that if you have below .08, you won't be guilty of driving while intoxicated, but if you have a .08 or above, it will be presumed that you are under the influence.
You also get into consumer law, and this is of course an area that could affect a lot of us, and when it comes to Arizona's lemon law, generally how does that work? Do we have pretty good protection in this state when it comes to consumer rights?
We do. The lemon law refers specifically to the law that allows the purchaser of a motor vehicle to return the vehicle to the manufacturer if it cannot be successfully repaired. The law is fairly complicated, and in the book I go through the various steps that a consumer will have to take before he or she can return the vehicle to the manufacturer, but ultimately the protection is there.
And you wrote this book, it says right here, a handbook for non-lawyers, so it is written in a way that is simple and easy to understand?
I tried to write it so that a person without legal training could readily understand the principles. I tried to simplify the law by compiling the various sources, the statutes, the cases, and the various information available on the internet into one reference guide. Simplify it in terms of finding the law and simplify it in terms of understanding the law.
Okay, Donald Luce, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Tucson attorney Don Luce will be signing copies of his book, and that will be happening this Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Barnes & Noble, Broadway, and Rosemont.